All right, folks, and we are live. Welcome to the Bitcoin Breakout and the Survival Podcast today on a Tuesday. I'll bring our special guest up with us here in just a second, Gary Leland, the Bitcoin Boomer. Real quick, though, one of our sponsors today was Start9. I wanted to let you know that Jesse Markowitz, a member of our community, a couple of times he's been on the show as a guest as well, is currently running a fundraiser to get CryptPad, which is an awesome collaborative kind of clone of Office Suite. So not only can you collaborate, but everything's fully encrypted end to end. This product already exists. But what he's running a fundraiser to do is get it packaged so it can be put onto a Start9 server. Think of Start9 kind of like a server that works like a smartphone, that we can take all of these open source apps, we can package them, and we can put them up onto the Start9 server so they can be installed with just a click. Right now, you would have to be running like your own Umbrel server or something like that. So guys, check it out. I'll have a link in the audio notes today where you can contribute to this and get it off the ground. And with that, I want to introduce our special guest today who did me a real solid in coming on the air with me today because I lost a scheduled guest. Gary Leland, the Bitcoin Boomer. Turns out we've been walking around in the same backyard for quite a long time. Welcome to the show, Gary.
Hey, nice to be here. Didn't have to make it sound like I was a second fiddle there.
No, you're not. I've been trying to scam on how to get you on the air, period. And then I'm like, well, maybe he'll come if I tell him I'm host. So it was more like a Hail Mary to get you on short notice like that. So,
well, I guess we met a long time ago, back in the, I don't know what you'd call it, the tens? Or
the aughts. The aughts.
Yeah, aughts.
The aughts, right? I always said that we finally have decades again. We have the 20s. Like I grew up in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and then we had, I don't know what we are. But yeah, your background on the internet and podcasting, a whole goes way, way back. And I'm like, I talked to this guy about a softball podcast somewhere around 08, 09, and you're like, it has to be me because it could have been the only person, huh?
Yeah, I think I was the only person doing podcasts back then. Actually, when podcasting was so young, I guess it was kind of cool because you could call anyone and say you wanted to have them on your show. And they would think it was like a radio show or something, and they would automatically come on. Didn't matter who it was; they'd automatically, chance to be on a show.
Yeah. I remember back about the same time being in New York City and hearing a passerby conversation in a bar, and the guy was like so enthralled with this friend of his. He's like, he's got his own website and everything, and it's like, all right, man, like if that's what does it for you, that's what does it for you. But kind of let's start there, like your involvement with basically the internet and everything that we have online today goes back even pre-podcasting. Like you have a tremendous, I was blown away when I looked at your site of all the sites that you built and projects you've been part of over the years. What kind of brought you into the world of, the internet, e-commerce and stuff like that in the first place?
Well, I've been doing brick and mortar retail since 81 probably, or something like that. And when the internet came out, that sounds funny to say, or when I found out about the internet, that still sounds funny to say nowadays. Back in 95, I guess, I decided I had a wallpaper store. Wallpaper decorating store is the largest wallpaper store in Texas. It still runs. We sold it last year to someone who runs it under the name Leland's Wallpaper still, but I thought at the time, I said, this internet would be pretty good for selling wallpaper to people in other parts of the country. That was in 95. And so I contacted all my vendors and stuff. And I said, hey, I'm going to start this website and try to sell wallpaper. Do you have any images I could use to put on the website? And they all said, that's the stupidest thing we ever heard of. We're not even going to waste our time giving you any images to put on there. And so I was like, okay. So I worked on it for a while, but I couldn't get the shopping cart built, because you couldn't buy plugins really back then. And there wasn't WordPress and stuff. You had to do everything pretty much from scratch. So I gave it up. And the next year in 96, I dug into it again. I said, okay, I'm going to get this done. And I finally did it. I built a site and got the shopping cart working. And I bought a scanner because digital cameras weren't even out yet. And we would take wallpaper books and cut the pages out of them and scan the pieces of wallpaper to put on the website. And it took off like no tomorrow. It's kind of funny when you have a new niche that comes out, or a new technology, at least ways, the community that first forms around that technology really is very helpful in wanting it to grow. Like in the wallpaper community, I got emails all the time about a mistyping, or something didn't show up right, we would take a trip to Houston and we would be going through all the emails that I'd gotten on errors on the website. People would just out of the blue want to let me know, hey, just want to let you know this is blah, 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 blah. Same thing happened in podcasting. Same thing happened in Bitcoin. It forms tight communities. But that's basically how I started my experience on the internet was, I guess I built the first e-commerce site for a website back in 96. And then I guess I kind of repeated it again with the first e-commerce website for girls fast pitch softball in the year 2000. And, you know, when you do the first of something on a technology like the internet, you grow rather quickly. You know, everybody migrates to you. I remember on the softball website, I knew I had a good thing going because I would get phone calls every day from people going, I just have to call you and let you know this website's the coolest website I've ever seen in my life. I'm going to tell everybody I know about this website. And so when you get phone calls like that, which I doubt we would get today.
Today, now.
But back then, it was really kind of, I said, I think we're on to something here, guys. These people are pretty excited, and we had to accept checks in the mail. Yeah. And so we would accept checks back in the days. And we wanted the softball website. It was called softballjunk.com. And like I said, it catered to the girls' fast pitch softball, so super micro niche. But we wanted to do just e-commerce on that. But we had to have an address for them to send the checks to, you know, because they sent checks in the mail back then, too. So I'm not putting my credit card on the internet. Yeah. You know, oh, sir, I'll go in a restaurant and hand it to a stranger to walk out the room with it, but I'm not putting it on that internet. And so we'd see people in the parking lot and they'd be knocking on the door because all we had was a warehouse and going, is there a softball store in here? It's and we go, no. yeah, well, I'm too green. I go, yeah, and go, well, can we come in? I said, okay. And you know, we got to the point where we were doing like $30,000 a month. People walking hunting for us. we didn't even want the business. Yeah. So I said, hey guys, we got to take everything out of these boxes and turn this warehouse into a store. And so that's what we did. And that became that business. So that was another business. So, but that's basically my forte into the internet was businesses I wanted to run.
It's amazing the difference when a person does something like that in the beginning and takes it onto themselves rather than trying to bring it to somebody else. So your story about how they were like, we're not even going to send you pictures or whatever. Nobody will buy it, right? It makes me think of, I don't know if you're familiar with Ed Wallace. He's very well known in our market as an AM radio host on the weekends. He does a show called Wheels in the car market. He's been on air. I think he's retiring this October. He's been on the air for like 38 years.
Oh, wow.
And he built the first ever website for car shopping online. Change all the stuff you do today. Change your color, add your options there. He took it to all the manufacturers. They all said it was crazy. Nobody would ever buy a car online. And he never did anything with it. He basically tossed the code. You know, and you look back at that and go, if you just made it your own the way that you did with wallpaper and softball, the guy probably be worth more than you and me and Mark Cuban put together today. And it's a case for entrepreneurship and not trying to help people that don't want to be helped. Like run with the pack, you know?
Yeah, sometimes you just got to go with what you think inside. Because like I said, everybody basically told me people won't buy stuff on the internet. That's kind of a waste of time. And I said, well, I would buy stuff on the internet. So I don't know why no one else would buy stuff on the internet. That was my thinking. And so, you know, I went with it. And, you know, actually on the softball store, I had some softball teams that I ran a league here. And I wanted to get softball equipment cheaper. So I started a website to sell softball equipment just to like try to get prices cheaper from distributors. But then I looked at it one month and said, oh my God, we did $5,000 this month. And I'm just messing around with this at night. I said, if I had like 4 or 5 college kids that worked on all my websites, okay. I said, if we really worked on this, we could turn this into a nice profit margin. So I said, everybody quit working on that wallpaper website. Start working on the softball website. And I think the next month we did 10,000. Next month we did like 20. Next month we did like 40. But I mean, it grew like that just because it was the first one and the only one. As I said earlier, people were excited. They didn't have to go to a baseball website to buy stuff for their daughters or men's slow pitch websites. I remember one fall, we had to buy football cleats for my daughter because we couldn't find baseball cleats. Because it was the season and we played ball all year long. So it was well received. I guess being a softball coach gave me an insight as to what kids needed more than the other stores had.
It's the thing, with podcasting, marketing in general. I just think there's so many unexploited niches still available even today. It's not the super early days that we started out with because we're both old now, right? But there's still like I had no idea. I had a job at one point in my life, and I had no idea how big like girls soccer was in college. And I ended up with like two women that I was working with that both had daughters that were on full ride scholarships for soccer. Like this is a huge thing, and you have no idea. And I think like those niches, like you said, when somebody addresses those niches and no one else ever has, then that community gets tight fast. And that kind of leads me to where I want to go next with you, podcasting. So you're also like an OG podcaster, man. You've been around longer than me, and I'm 14 and a half years consecutive running. That's a long time in this game, and you're around longer than that. What brought you into the world of podcasting?
Well, I used to, like I said, I've been basically a salesman or a marketer, my whole life since I got out of school, and usually for myself. And I had a thing I subscribed to that was a newsletter, internet newsletter. That sounds funny to say now, internet newsletter. Who would subscribe to a newsletter now in the mail? Yeah. But I subscribed to a newsletter that said, there's this thing getting ready to come out called podcasting. This could turn into something. Who knows? And so I told one of the techs working for me, hey, we need to get into this podcasting, whatever the hell this is.
Whatever it is.
Yeah. And he was home for college for Thanksgiving, I think. And he ended up moving on to work for Google. He was a smart kid. And we started a podcast show about softball equipment, because that's what I did was softball equipment. It was called the Sports Podcast. I think it was the first podcast that was sports related. And I would interview people in the sports world and then talk about softball equipment. But in the meantime, he built, I just wanted to do the show. And he was working over there for a couple of weeks, and I didn't know what was taking him so long because I really didn't even know what podcasting was yet. And he ended up building a complete podcast directory. And I had one of the first podcast directories called Podcast Pickle. And so I had the first show. I remember that. Yeah, the first show on it was the sports podcast show, which was the interviews. And then in 2006, Time Magazine ran that website as one of their 50 coolest websites in the world. So that was kind of cool. But it used to be when iPods were out, before iPhones, if you wanted to go find a podcast, Apple didn't have them listed yet. They didn't have a podcast genre. They didn't even have that genre on their podcast yet, on their iPod. You had to come to my site. I guess you could go to people's websites, but you basically would come to my site, browse the podcast and find one you like, and hook up your iPod and download it overnight so you could have it the next morning to listen to when you went to work or whatever. I still remember when I came home one night and I told my wife, Kathy, we have just got our 100th podcast listed on Podcast Pickle. That was a big thing to us, was that we broke 100 podcasts on there. This was going to go somewhere, but that's how I got into podcasting. Was I just read a small clip on it. I'm kind of like one of those people. If I see something and it makes sense to me, I just do it immediately. I don't research it. I don't spend a lot of time testing it or see which way it goes. I just start doing it. And that's another case of that.
What did it for me, I big background with sales and marketing, and I always recognized that audio was the most powerful form of marketing, because the only marketing that could be consumed in earnest while doing something else.
Yeah.
So like if morning bathroom ritual, maybe you could read, but if you're out walking or you're working out in the gym or you're driving in your car, even if you're reading, you shouldn't be, you're not going to give it your full attention. Video also requires that kind of visual component to it. But audio, if I could get audio to you.
No, I agree 100%. Yeah.
Then I got you, man. You go to the gym, you're in your car, whatever, you can consume audio. And like some of my early listeners, like John from SOE, whose shirt I'm wearing, like he literally forced his employees to listen to my show while they were working. Like he pumped it into the warehouse while they were sewing equipment and stuff like that. And it just had that flexibility. But the way I got in was like I was doing, I had a company that did websites, and web development, programming, things like that. And we got a guy that was a financial advisor. He wanted a podcast along with all the rest of the web suite we were developing for him. So I'm like, I bid the job, got the job, took it back to my lead dev. And I'm like, here, build this. And he's like, I don't know how to do podcasts. And I'm like, I've been thinking about this anyway. So I started doing a podcast in my car with like an little Samsung MP3 player and a headset. And like I did it for like 2 weeks, and I'm like, oh, this is a hell of a lot better than what I do now. And like I get home and I didn't want to punch a hole in the wall anymore because I had kind of vented to my audience of like 3 people at that point. And I was like, I know this is going to work now. I could tell this was going to work. And that was June of 2008. And I do think that if you're in a sales and marketing space at that time, if you had your eyes open and you looked at it, you knew what podcasting was going to become because of that audio marketability factor. That like I remember, like you remember guys like spending tons of money to make a bunch of cassette tapes and mail them to people.
Yeah, I do.
Right, that was like info marketing.
And then it went to DVDs they would mail.
Yeah. And then like, okay, so wait a minute. I can take this audio content. I can generate new content every day, and I can distribute it at the speed of light across the internet, across the world. Like I was actually surprised how long it took for podcasting to turn into what it did.
Long time.
Because that was so immediately evident. But like you said at the beginning, you had like podcatchers and stuff like that. You didn't have, but once Apple adopted it, it was like game on.
Yeah. And that killed Podcast Pickle, unfortunately, because I even switched over to Apple, and then they had it on the iPhone. Oh my gosh, you don't even need to hook it up to a directory anymore. I mean, they really killed it. But podcasting. The thing about podcasting was that I remember is once we started moving on Podcast Pickle and I started doing the podcast, I was sold. And I was a guru and I loved it and I thought it was the best thing ever. But everybody I told about it would go, that's stupid. Why wouldn't you just listen to the radio in your car? And I was going, this is way better than the radio in your car. I mean, this is way better. You can select what to listen to. You don't have to have car. Yeah, that's stupid. So I've heard that a lot in my life about things I've done. Even today with Bitcoin, for the longest time I heard, oh, that's just made up internet money. That's not anything. That's just made up money. I go, all money's made up. I mean, but yeah, I've heard that most of my life. It's a matter of, being able to see beyond the doubting Debbies or the doubting Thomases or whatever, and still go forward. Where many a person, I think, sees something and has a great idea. Because even my dad would say this. He goes, I thought of that and I should have moved on it. I'd be a millionaire today. Well, you should have, Dad. I mean, you should have. You're right. Whose fault is that?
There's always that guy. I thought of the rear windshield wiper or something like that. Everybody has thought of something that eventually came out, but thinking of it and doing it are way different. I remember I was a little kid in school. I had this idea for a watch you could play games on.
Oh,
and I thought my idea was valid. Well, the idea was valid, but I could have sat there with a Casio and a soldering iron all day, and I wasn't gonna ever actually make it into it. This is back when people played Atari. I mean, that's how long ago this is, right?
I have one of those somewhere for my kids. That's probably vintage now.
Oh, the Atari 2600 is full on vintage, man. That's hipster nirvana. If you've got an original Atari 2600,
I got a lot of vintage stuff around here because I don't get rid of much stuff. I always go, that'll be worth something someday. I'll just keep that. Doesn't take up much room.
I think
this house is full with vintage stuff in storage.
I think you and I are both vintage ourselves at this point, right? We're like vintage people. What brought you to Bitcoin then? So like you were in the internet, then you got into the podcasting. Like when did you adopt? Or I wouldn't say adopt because that's a gradient, right? Like people find Bitcoin, they learn about Bitcoin, they buy some Bitcoin, and really adopt is something that takes time. When did you first learn about Bitcoin and actually, maybe buy your first Bitcoin, learn more about it?
Well, I actually bought my first Bitcoin, I'd say in early to mid 2017. Okay. I had been exposed to it first time. I think on your typical Bitcoin story where it took me 3 shots to finally move in. The first time was $100 of Bitcoin. I was told about it. And by Mark Risen. I don't know if you know him out of Dallas, Dr. Bitcoin. And he explained to me, I was going over to Callie Lewis's and them studio, and he had a place in the back. And he started explaining it to me as online stocks. He said, it's like online stocks. I said, I don't mess with that. I said, I lose money all the time when I do online stocks. He goes, well, this is a little different. And he wasn't able to express the difference.
Okay.
And the next time I was exposed to it was by Adam Curry. Used to be an old MTV VJ. And it was around maybe $800 or something a coin, maybe $1,000. and still wasn't sold on it. Then I was speaking at the Big D conference in Dallas, and I'd finished my session. I'm walking down the hall, and there was like 4 or 5 of my friends were there talking. So I walked up there, and they were finishing up. A guy named Tony Sakala, who used to run the WordPress meetup over in Dallas, was talking about Bitcoin. And I got the last part of it. And he mentioned that it was the only missing internet protocol. There wasn't a protocol for money, and this was it. And that is what it took to hear that, because my
He's your language.
Yeah, and I said, "Oh," then they all just walked away. The other 4 people, I don't know if they bought Bitcoin to this day. And I said, "Tony, tell me about that. I missed most of it. Can you kind of refresh that?" And it was my 3rd time I'd been told about Bitcoin. And so we sat on the couch, and this was like 1 o'clock, and like 5:30 came, and the conference was over, and we were still sitting on the couch talking about Bitcoin. I went home. Being a podcast guy, I immediately got on my phone, found a podcast about Bitcoin. There were a ton of them already. Listened to one on the way home. I got home. I called Tony up, said, "Hey, are you going to be at the conference tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Can I talk to you some more about Bitcoin?" He said, "Sure." So we went over and talked some more about Bitcoin. I don't think we attended the conference. We talked about Bitcoin. I went over his house, saw his mining operation. And that night when I came home, I started buying Bitcoin. That was my Bitcoin story. I just had to have someone explain it to me in a method I could understand. Because, as you know, Bitcoin's hard to see. But once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Correct.
But it is hard to see, and especially for, I think, boomers, because they aren't even as familiar with the internet as maybe you and I are the web. They're used to being coddled, being taken care of by a bank. They aren't used to being their own bank. And, as you know, being your own bank is a great power. And with great power comes great responsibility. And most of them aren't prepared for that responsibility,
Yeah, my father's still paying. He's a good stock trader, but he's still paying a bro. He still makes a phone call. I want to buy, X number of shares. Like that, you could have like $8 trades on E-Trade or something, and he won't even get a computer. He's a bit older than both of us, but there's a lot of that out there. And
there is one. That one always gets me though. Once the call and make a trade, you can make it instantaneously or set up.
And that broker's sitting there with his own online, like, okay, Mr. Spirko, I've placed that order for you. It should clear it's already there, right?
Yeah.
It should clear sometime today. You'll get a trade confirmation by email. Oh, you don't have email. You get it in the mail in a week,
And do you think sometimes they must be going, you're sitting there, they're sitting there talking to you, and they're going, and they're saying to the other guys, "What an idiot! He's calling me to type this in for him."
It makes me think of the movie Boiler Room, where they're pretending like all the floor's in chaos or whatever. Like, it's a world. I mean, to be fair to people, it's fluxed a lot in our lifetime. If I think back to like 1993 when I got out of the Army to even 2013, so that 20-year period, the flux in that 20 years.
Well, go to me. I graduated high school in 73.
Okay.
I've seen a hell of a lot of change. That extra 20 years there is a big, big difference, because we got off the gold standard in 71. Yeah. So everything started happening on steroids. That, for that 20-year period was on steroids, which it still is. And now the growth of technology is even at a faster pace. Everything's at a faster pace. Where it took the internet. It still sounds funny when I say the internet. I don't know. Yeah. I'm probably saying that an old fart way, a boomer way. That's probably a boomer thing to say. But if you think how long it took the net to grow to being something used on a regular basis, I mean, Bitcoin is growing at a much faster rate, because of the net, and so I think, and because of the U.S. government's help, of course, and actually the world's help, I guess, people who don't like the U.S. government, countries that don't like that, but they're all contributing to the growth of Bitcoin.
I've described Bitcoin as the first ever asymmetric weapon, right? So the asymmetric warfare is a very ancient concept. You can go back and read The Art of War, and there's concepts that are asymmetric warfare in there. But an asymmetric weapon is totally different. So if we'll go back in time to where everybody's got flintlocks, right? And if I had somehow come up with a semi-automatic rifle when everybody else had flintlocks, the worst thing that could happen to me is my enemy gets the weapon. If my enemy gets the weapon, now we're equalized, and now now it's bad for me because I had an unfair advantage, right? I had an asymmetric advantage. I've lost it. Where with Bitcoin, every time anybody picks up and starts using Bitcoin, the network gets stronger, the effect is stronger, the price action is stronger. And I try not to focus on price. I know you're the same way with that, but like in the end, it is part of the whole equation. So if you took the entities that we most consider ourselves in adversarial relationships with, the more they themselves accept the inevitable and adopt Bitcoin, the better it is for us. And I don't know that there's ever been a thing that if you would think of someone as an adversary or an enemy, that you would more want them to embrace.
Right. I think that, Bitcoin is actually could be a weapon very easily by the United States government, I believe. I think the way we've weaponized money, we could weaponize Bitcoin. They could just, since they can print as much money as they want. I mean, people would say, well, they start mining Bitcoin. Why would they mine Bitcoin?
I would if I were them.
I wouldn't. I just print more money. Yeah.
With your money. Right? With your debt, not even your money, your debt. Yeah. I'm just going to print.
They could just say, instead of giving Ukraine, and I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong, but instead of giving Ukraine $80 million or whatever the amount is.
80 billion, right?
80 billion, thanks. They could just buy tomorrow $80 billion worth of Bitcoin and corner the Bitcoin market, And once they started doing that, oh my gosh, then they would have another weapon in their arsenal,
I would also have a small country known as Jackistan, though. That's the other side of that, right? Like if they did that, I ain't selling. And so at some point, my holdings, if they did that, I could have my little island with my M2s up on it. Yeah.
But enough people would sell, and they have the money to buy at whatever the cost is. So the cost is not an issue to them. Even if it got to $100,000, that's not an issue. And how much Bitcoin would they own in the meantime, if they were started buying it? And then and without announcing it, and then all of a sudden they announce, okay, just like anyone else does, they would announce, okay, I've got enough ready to go. We've been buying Bitcoin. We now have 25% of all the Bitcoin in the world.
I'm not sure that's not already happening with at least some central bank somewhere. Because if I was running a central bank, I would look at it as an asymmetric trade. I'm spending money that doesn't exist anyway.
Right.
If this whole Bitcoin thing fails, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because it wasn't real money to begin with.
Right. But the reality of that, you go back to the asymmetric weapon, any central bank puts it on the balance sheet. Every central bank has to put it on the balance sheet. Like it becomes a race at that point. And it's part of why I think there's been so much knuckle dragging, heel dragging resistance to a spot ETF. Because I think a spot ETF, the wall of money that comes down is one thing. But the part that no one seems to get, I had this discussion with Marty Benton, I don't think he wants to get it, is that it makes Bitcoin bluntly unfuckwithable, right? The day that Bitcoin is on the retirement account of a firefighter or a school teacher or some other city level worker, and it's part of their pension, you can't, all this idea that they're going to make it illegal or something like that, like you can't do it now. You can't go there. It ends up with this kind of like.
Well, was gold not in people's pensions and stuff at some point? I mean, that would be my question to that is, and they certainly made that illegal to own.
Well, that was just because gold was money.
Yeah. Right.
We're not talking about an exchange traded fund here. You go into an ETF and you actually have it as a classification of asset on a pension. Because the problem we have today is we think of gold as like this thing that you buy and you hold. And at the time all of that happened, it wasn't. It was just the thing that backed money itself. So they changed the money. And they also, it wasn't something that was done quickly either. They repegged in 33, and they finally decoupled in 71. And then that's the thing people don't get. Like you didn't actually see the decoupling until 75 when ownership became possible privately and openly again, right? So in 71, Nixon closed the gold window, but nothing really happened to gold price. If you go back and look at a historical chart, 1975, the average person could buy and hold gold again. And then,
what was it, around $60 or something an ounce at the time?
Yeah, it was like, I think it was pegged falsely to 33 all the way up to 71, and it creeped up to like $60. You're right. And then it went up to hundreds of dollars. And then now we're both showing our age. Back in 82, the Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market, and that jacked everything up, right?
I think that got up to $50 an ounce back then.
Yeah.
And then gold went up with it.
Yeah.
Maybe to 600 or something.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going history here. But
well, I just remember because I went down to the gold store, silver store, and sold all my gold and silver. Sold my high school ring, sold all my junk stuff I had. My dad used to work at the Naval Shipyard in Charleston, South Carolina, and he was a welder there. And they had dredges that would go out in the harbor and the rivers and dredge to make them deeper. And like all the metal contents or all the solid stuff would all be filtered down to this room. I never went there, so I'm not sure exactly how it worked. But they would dig at lunch. They'd go in this room or wherever this was, and they'd dig through all this debris that was picked up off the ocean floor. And he would bring home rings, all kinds of rings and jewelry and all kinds of stuff that had fallen off people's fingers. And so we had a ton of this stuff. And that he had given me over the year because it didn't have that big a value. So I went at $50 an ounce. I was selling it all.
I don't remember what year it was, but I'm talking the last 10 years. There was a huge run up on silver. And I remember telling people, like, if you're holding some silver in your box long term, don't worry about this. But if you have stuff that you see as tradable, if you have a silver, you're holding SLV in your IRA or something like that right now, I'm like, I would go ahead and get out and buy it back if that's what you want to hold long term, because we're out to have a crash in the silver market. People ask me how I knew. I said, when the gas stations started putting, like gas stations and laundromats started putting up signs that said we buy silver, I'm like, that was kind of like, remember it was one of the Rockefellers, I think, that said the shoe shine boy gave him a stock tip, and he's like,
that was Joe Kennedy. That was Joe Kennedy. I think that was Joe Kennedy.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I know my history. I mean, I don't know all the details, but I know a little bit about everything.
Yeah, that was old man Kennedy. He's like, yeah, shoe shine boy gave me a tip on a stock, and I'm like, sell it all, get out. Like,
yeah, it's like right now, gold is $1,600 an ounce, and silver is $19 an ounce. That's crazy. I mean, really, I'm not into gold and silver, but that's crazy that it's that low.
Okay. But are you talking about, like, do you think it's crazy the spread between silver and gold? Because the historical correlation between those two metals, that's a big spread.
Yeah, well, it's been a big spread for a while, though, ever since. But it used to be like maybe 10 ounces of silver equaled an ounce of gold, maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So it is a big spread now. But, I don't know. I think it's just crazy those two are that low. I know they're not used for currency anymore, but I feel like those have probably been manipulated. I know they've been manipulated. As to who's manipulating or how many things are manipulating, it's another story. But from what I see, the banks, all the banks, central banks of the world are stocking up on gold like no tomorrow. Yeah. But the price is dropping, Yeah,
I get shit from the Bitcoin community sometimes because I'm still an advocate of diversification in your investments, and I still recommend holding silver and gold as basically a wealth hedge. And I don't really see the problem with that. If you want to, then I get shit from the gold people because I say gold's terrible money today. Because it's not programmable, it's not movable at the speed of light. It costs.
Well, if you were trying to get out of Hong Kong some time ago, you certainly weren't getting out with a bucket full of gold. That's for damn sure.
But you could have 12 words in your head, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that was it's completely, unless you absolutely know the person has the knowledge, there's no way to censor the distribution of the knowledge. Even if you extorted the 12 words out of me, maybe I gave it to somebody else and now there's $1 left in there. I don't know, right? Like, there's always a way.
Well, you could always have more than one wallet, one with your 12 words that you give away. It goes, okay, that's only 5% of my stash, and that's enough to keep them happy. So I mean, but yeah, I'm not a big gold or silver guy. I could see where people would think it would be worth holding on to. I guess I don't think it's ever coming back as to back any kind of currency ever since China has China's number one in gold mining and Russia's number two. That would put us number three. I don't think the U.S. dollar, the U.S. government wants to go back to that since we don't control it. Which gets back to my statement earlier. They should take advantage of it since it's basically free for them and control Bitcoin. Get as much of it as they can. Because I just can't see them going, okay, we're back by gold again. Oh, and China's got more gold than we do. And they don't have more, but they have more new gold coming out of the ground.
Absolutely. I was going to say, because I'm not a big conspiracy theorist in spite of the name of the show, but the whole Fort Knox thing intrigues me that it's never really been audited, right? Like maybe we should know what's really in there, and
well, if you've read the Jekyll Island, the creature from Jekyll Island, you kind of understand all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you audit it once, and I think they even only audited like one room of gold and said, okay, and we got 50 of these rooms or whatever.
Yeah, so just trust them.
Just multiply it out.
Good. And I don't think anybody drilled a hole in a bar either and like
Yeah.
tested the purity of the gold from the center or whatever. So
Right.
even that.
Yeah, but the only way you can really do that, I guess, is melt. So that's a question. When France came and picked up all their gold,
Yeah.
they sent like a battleship fleet over here and picked up all their gold to take back. Do you think they melted that all down and did it to see if it was all gold?
They just moved it from one hole in the ground to another hole in the ground, most likely. I mean,
I would think they would say, "Hey, we want to make sure we got what we gave them," because that was the thing. Germany was taking over all these countries, and first thing they did was pillage all their gold assets. So I think the European countries said, we need to get this gold out of here.
Yeah.
Get it over to someplace safer. So they sent it all over here. But then when they started wanting it back, well, that's a different story.
Yeah, because that's a lot of people don't know that. That's what it was. What's his name? From France. God, I keep saying Marcon because he's the current guy, but it was the one guy that was the head of France and back in the 70s, and he was like just cashing in all I want the gold for the dollar. I want the gold for the dollar, and that's
as soon as you say his name, I'm going to know it.
And my head hurts that I can't think. There's going to be somebody in the chat will tell us to make us both feel dumb.
But so and they sent like a battleship fleet. I guess that was pretty smart. If you're taking that much gold, your whole country's worth of gold. You need to make sure it doesn't. The ship doesn't get sunk. You aren't sending it over with one boat.
See, that's the thing that makes a huge case for Bitcoin for me, though, because in one block, it's moved. Right. It instantly, like when we think about moving a couple $1,000, that's not that big a deal. But when you start talking about moving $100 million, $1 billion worth of wealth, the cost in moving that in a heavy metal from security, transportation, et cetera, is massive. And what if you're moving it back and forth? And you see this on a small scale, though, because this is what killed it for me with it being used as money ever again. When I started doing my membership program back in 2009, I took online credit card payments, PayPal, it's the same any site would have at the time. I also took check by mail because there were people that just, like you said, I'm not putting my credit card number. Okay, fine, right? I refuse to use PayPal. I get it. They're evil, whatever, but fine. And then I also took silver by mail. I wouldn't take gold because it would be a tenth of a gram or something because it's a $50 membership.
Right.
And I used to get 30, 40 ounces of silver a month. And I sold membership for like 2 ounces to a membership. So it was not a huge part of the business, but it was significant. I haven't seen silver come through in 5 years. But now I get more orders for Bitcoin than I ever got in silver and gold.
Well, that's kind of funny right now, with podcasts, with a BitBlock boom, of course we accept Bitcoin. Now that Bitcoin is down, I have more orders with Bitcoin than I've ever had with Bitcoin. Then again, though, the conference has grown a lot, but still, it's I'm surprised at the amount of Bitcoin I'm receiving, which is kind of cool since I'm a long-term believer, in Bitcoin. I'm kind of excited about it. So I kind of say to everybody, hey, if you think Bitcoin's going down, just pay with your tickets with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I'll take the chance.
See, I'm at a point now, though, because of technologies like Strike, I'm spending more Bitcoin than ever without actually selling or spending any of my Bitcoin.
Right. That's what I do too. I buy like Cash App if I want to send some. I'll buy it on Cash App and just transfer it to whoever needs it.
If I go to a restaurant and I see the big orange B, I'm like, you bet I'm going to pay my bill in Bitcoin. And all I'm doing is like, check comes, I'm going to need this much to cover, the tip, deposit, send.
But, when you come to that part, like Landry's, you're familiar with the Landry's chain of restaurants.
Yeah.
What is it downtown? They own the fine steak place downtown on Main Street.
Three Forks.
What's across the street from that?
Capitol Grill.
Well, down a little further next to Capitol Grill.
House,
yes.
I'm revealing my addiction here, right?
They accept Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And and they have like 3 restaurants. I've been to 3 restaurants now of Landry's. The one in Arlington here, 2 on Main Street. And they accept Bitcoin, but when you go and say, I want to pay in Bitcoin, they go, we don't know what that is. I was told actually at all 3 of them that they don't accept Bitcoin.
Okay.
And I go, I got your app here, and you definitely accept Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I want to pay in Bitcoin because I get a rebate, Bitcoin rebate. They've got it set up. And so, but none of the three knew how to do it, as a matter of fact. So it's not like everybody who accepts Bitcoin knows how to do it.
Well, you know the term greenwashing. I've come up with the term orange washing. There's a ton of big companies. They'll take Bitcoin or they'll say crypto and take other crap too. And like they hold none. It's immediately back end swapped and it's going into dollars. Like Target takes Bitcoin, apparently. I don't.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, maybe they don't even do it anymore. They did at one time anyway, and I don't think they ever had a single Bitcoin on a balance sheet, right? Like, so there is this market that if you sell in Bitcoin, the Bitcoiners will come, and there's getting to be more and more and more of us. But yeah, I'm big on using apps like Strike, like Cash App, etc., so that I'm not actually creating a tax consequence.
Right. Yeah. You're not, because it's first in, first out.
Yep.
So actually that would be.
It never went in. It never went in. I sent dollars. They got Bitcoin. It's not my problem.
Yeah. They, I saw this morning that Google is now setting up to accept Bitcoin for their Google storage service.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Every time a major asymmetric warfare tool, every time a major brand does this, it brings interest. I know, like my nephew, and I guess you call her my niece. I don't know what your nephew's wife is to you, my niece-in-law, right? They run an online business. It's 100% membership driven, kind of like a lot of my businesses. And I'm like, you guys need to just accept the Bitcoin. Like, you don't have to buy it. All you have to do is accept it.
Yeah.
And like they didn't do it. Then Musk bought some Bitcoin and said Tesla was going to accept it. And 5 minutes later, my phone's ringing off the hook, and my nephew's like, "How do we do this?" I'm like, "Man, you're sitting at like the pinnacle of the top of the market right now." It was like in the 50s, headed to 60. I'm like, I would accept it, but I wouldn't go buying any right now. And then that's when everybody wants to jump in. It is kind of crazy. But in all this, I will admit I am a former shitcoiner. I made some money on it, lost some money on it. Most of my picks were good for the time that they were made. I was a number go up guy in the beginning. I didn't get the full thing, but eventually I came around to full on maximalism. And
I think that's normal. And I did the same thing. I think when someone gets into Bitcoin, and they go, "Oh my gosh, this went from a nickel to $60,000. Let's say they go, "Gosh, if I can get one of these ones that are nickel, and it just goes up to $1. Yeah. So I think that's a natural progression. I don't think that's anything unusual. Let me put it that way. It's not a smart move normally, and you can make money with shit coins. It's just long term, you're not, and you'd be better off just to buy Bitcoin and support the network. I think the main difference between shitcoiners and Bitcoiners, I always say, is shitcoiners just want to make money.
Correct.
That's all they care about is making money. Where Bitcoiners, they do want to make money. I'm not saying they don't too, but they realize that Bitcoin can change the world.
Correct.
So they're just as worried about changing the world for the better as they are about making money. Where shitcoiners just want to make money. They don't give a shit about the world.
I actually came up with a phrase for myself because I was a little more selective with like, what's the use case? I called myself a shitcoin minimalist, right? Instead of a Bitcoin maximalist. And I always want to know these use cases. But as I watched Lightning develop, I went like, every use case you have is moot and gone now to a large degree. The other thing was that I started realizing a lot of these promises were nothing but promises. These shit coins would come out. We're going to build a thing, but we have to have a token first so we can build the thing. Well, why don't you go build the thing? Like,
especially if you went through the ICO phase, you really,
yeah. I was around for all of that. Like we're going to build it. The only one I ever saw before they closed the window on the ICOs, they said, we're going to build the thing. Here's our ICO. And then they built the thing was the Brave browser.
Oh, yeah.
They actually, I use it to this day. Tons of people use it, don't even know what crypto is. They built a legitimate product that they funded through an ICO. And
what does that pay in BAT? Is that what that pay? What does that pay in?
Basic attention tokens,
Yeah, I couldn't remember. Yeah,
and it's a big pain in the ass because it's on the ERC. Well, I guess it's on the merge now, but it was on the ERC20, so the fees were stupid. I still have people that tip me in BAT because it's integrated into the browser, and getting it out because they like use a third party for the exchange because they don't want to touch it because then their hands are messy. It's called Uphold. It's a big mess. And then you have things like, the Albi extension that people could just instantaneously drop Lightning form Bitcoin in your lap on any site that you run. And more of that's being developed. About the only place that I'd like to see Bitcoin really do more, but I think it's coming, is privacy. Like
well,
that's
you got to realize Bitcoin, compared to shit coins, those people just made that money up, and they can use as much of it as they want to, so they can pay as many coders as they need to move quickly.
Correct.
And it doesn't hurt them if they move quickly and mess up, because it's a scam anyway.
Yeah.
Where Bitcoin, there's not quite $1 trillion, but I think pretty close to it in there. They have to move slowly, and they don't have a lot of free Bitcoin just to be giving people to come to work for them. So it's two different scenarios. Complete. Your comment about your shitcoin minimalist. I was at Unconfiscatable in Vegas. Have you ever been to that conference?
No.
It's Tone Vay's conference, and I think in 2020, maybe 2020, he had hats he was giving out that said shitcoin minimalist.
Okay.
So I have seen that. So I don't know if he got that from you or not.
But
he was giving out shit. He was giving out.
I do predate 2020 on that term. I will say that. That's interesting. But yeah, privacy is the one place I can see it tightened up. But I think that's happening.
I think it is too. I think that's slowly. Bitcoin just doesn't do anything fast. I mean, let's just face it. They're very slow moving on a steady path. Because really all they have to do is screw up one time. Yeah. And you're going to lose a lot of faith in them. So they move very slowly. So I'm happy with them moving slowly.
That's why I like the layered solution approach, because if you go out and come up with the next layered application for Bitcoin and you screw it up, Bitcoin don't care. Yeah. So you have this place you can take these risks and move quickly and try to do things. And if it doesn't work, you don't hurt this perfect thing we have at the core. And people get mad at me when I say perfect. I'm comparing it to everything else. I'm not saying it's without flaw. I'm saying compared to everything else that we have as a monetary instrument, it's
perfect. And where have we seen layered solutions before?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. I mean, money has credit cards riding on top of it, PayPal riding on top of it, or at one point it was gold with dollars riding on top of it and credit cards riding on top of it. Yeah. So this is not an unheard of thing. This is something you see happen with money. Oops.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin is more than just something people are holding on to get rich.
I completely agree. Now, in this journey to Bitcoin maximalism, eventually you established a conference called BitBlock Boom. It is a true Bitcoin only, like literally shitcoining will get you thrown out and banned. I was reading your site. I was like, this is awesome. What led you to create BitBlock Boom, and tell us about it?
Well, I had already created or co-founded the conference podcast movement, which was very successful. And I sold that several years ago, my share of it, to some radio station. They wanted to get in the podcasting business. And I wanted to learn about Bitcoin at the time. This was like 2018, maybe 2019. This is our 6th year. So it's been like 17, I guess, or 18. And so I said, hey, I'll do a conference. And I just started a conference. And I called people up, got in touch with Safedine Moose. He had just written his book. And I think I was the first conference he had attended. And Pierre Rochard, who was living in New York from Austin, and Michael Goldstein. I contacted these people and said, hey, would you come speak at my conference? And they all said, yeah. Hardest part was selling tickets. That was the hard part. Yeah. People were, we were at the end. As it turned out, I ended up with this great people coming to speak at my conference. And I'm out giving away tickets every night.
Because the bear came, right? The bear came hard at that time.
I can't have them show up, and there's 10 people in the audience. So I started that with Tony Sakala, the person who told me about Bitcoin. And Tony had other things he wanted to venture into. So I took over the conference completely after the first year. And it's just grown from there. But, it's kind of like podcasting, doing the conference when it started. I've always thought that if you want to learn something, you need to find out from the people who are the experts. And so I've normally started podcasts for new ventures I've been into, so I can personally call some of the top people and interview them and find out personally the answers to my questions. And I figure if I find it an interesting question, other people will. And that's kind of how Bitcoin, BitBlock Boom formed, except it was just a Bitcoin. It was the first year, I have to admit, it wasn't as hard of a Bitcoin maximalist conference as it came the second year.
I got you.
Second year, it was strictly Bitcoin, and it's been more and more Bitcoin ever since. So now it's Well, actually, it's the longest running Bitcoin conference on the planet since everybody else quit doing them during COVID, and we continued having ours. So actually, 6 years makes it the longest Bitcoin. It's not the oldest,
crazy.
Just the longest running.
Yeah. Well, there was definitely some blessings to being in Texas during the whole COVID's debacle, right?
Well, I think COVID really is what put BitBlock Boom on the map. Because being in August, usually by August, most people had been to 5 or 6 Bitcoin conferences. And they're going, I don't need to go to another one. I don't know anything about that. But the year that COVID hit, we did our conference. And I remember sales were going, okay. And then in July, I started being on a few podcasts. And people go, oh, this conference is actually happening? And I go, yeah, it's actually going to happen. And the sales went off the hook. So in July and August of that year, oh my gosh, we sold almost all the tickets because people were going, I haven't been to a Bitcoin conference all year. I'll take a chance on this conference in the heat of Austin. And then they all came and they all said, wow, this is a great conference. And so the COVID actually, I think, is what's responsible for BitBlock Boom's growth because it got everybody to come here because they hadn't been to a conference in a year.
I also think it was just, in some ways, people just wanted to go anywhere. This is actually a picture for those that are on the video. This is my shop at one of my workshops on my property. And this is right in the middle of the pandemic. This was in the fall of 2020. And this is just how people were. If you gave them a place where they could go be people. And what had happened in this picture, I'd gone in the house to check on some stuff. And Gavin Newsom was talking about how many people you're allowed to have at Thanksgiving. Oh, so I went out and I did the DJ thing, like everybody knock the crap out of the bottom of the bottle and raise a toast and show them what you think. And like this year in particular, when I sold this workshop, and it's nowhere near as big as what you're doing as far as head count, but it's 65 people paid tickets, sold out in like 93 seconds when we pushed it live. And it's because people just wanted to go somewhere and do something and be with other people and actually discuss the things that they were interested in. And I think I don't think we knew how lucky we were here and people in Florida and maybe South Dakota compared to some other places. I had family in like Pennsylvania, New York, and they literally couldn't do anything.
Yeah, people were excited to come to Texas. I remember people were asking, are you not scared that this city's going to shut you down? I was like, no, I don't see why they would shut me down, which they didn't. But it was kind of funny, everybody was walking around without their masks on, and the hotel was really upset about this. And I came out, I guess during a break, I had like 10 minutes between speakers or something. And the lady from the hotel said, Gary, we really need to talk to you. I said, okay, what do you need? She goes, well, you need to go in this room. And they had an empty room that wasn't being used across the hall. So I went in there, and it was like 3 people in there. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And they go, well, we have a problem. Your people are not wearing their masks. They're walking around holding cups of coffee, saying they're drinking coffee so they don't have to wear their mask. But that's not working because they're not drinking coffee. They're just using it as an excuse. And we're going to have to call the cops if you don't get them to wear their mask. I said, well, first of all, I may look like their daddy, but I'm not.
I'm not.
I'm not their daddy. I may be old enough to be their daddy, but I'm not their daddy. And, so if you need to call the cops, I would recommend you call them because they'll love that. I mean, they will just eat that up. And well, what do you mean they'll eat that up? I said, oh my gosh, they'll all take off their masks. They'll all want to go down to jail. Yeah. They'll all want to film that happening. Yeah. And you're like, okay, well, we'll talk to you later. Then they never bothered me the rest of the day at all about it. Then the next year when I complained about that, because they wanted me to do that again, they go, well, I don't know why anyone would even walk down that hallway back to those rooms to complain. I mean, you're in a private area back there. Yeah. It's not like you're out in the hallway or the lobby or something like that. And I said, okay, well, I just wanted to make sure before we did it here again, I don't have that issue again. Yeah. But they did have a clause in there. They called it the BitBlock Boom clause that year. And I think Sheridan or Marriott started adding those as a COVID thing. You're doing something when there's a contractual clause named after you. Yeah. Like you've really made it when that happens. And so you guys are already selling tickets for next year, right? It's going to be August 2023. Yeah, we've been selling really stronger than ever before. Next year, it's in August, last weekend in August. And in the past, it's been 1 day of workshops and 1 day conference day with sessions. This year, we're doing one-day workshops, 2 days of conference sessions. So we're expanding. The conference sessions are what really everybody comes for.
Sure.
So we're doubling the size of it, basically. And the facility we have, are you familiar with the Hilton right next to the convention center in Austin?
Not really.
It's a really nice hotel. We've
Okay.
got the 6th floor, the entire 6th floor.
Awesome.
And that holds like maybe 3,000, 3,500 people. But we're only going to do 1,500 people is our goal. So even though we'll be doubling the size from 700 to 1,500, it should be a lot more room for everybody. So
Sure.
it shouldn't feel all that packed. It's not like it's going to be, oh my gosh, we can't even walk now. It should be like, oh, wow, we got lots of room this year.
More space.
So that's the goal, is we've doubled the size of it. And that's an expensive location, to be honest with you. It's a great location, but it is expensive. So we've gone up on tickets, maybe 10, 15% gone up on sponsorships a lot, and double size of the room. And tickets are on sale now. They go up at the end of the month, and that's what they do every month. So the sooner you get, it's funny, when tickets get to $2,000, which I think the Pro Pass right now is maybe $600 or something. I can't remember. That's for everything. All the dinners, we have events and parties every night. They sell at a good pace, but when that gets to be close to $2,000, they'll be selling like no tomorrow. I never understand.
Crazy.
Yeah, and you can get a refund till June 1st, full refund. So to me, I don't know why people just don't buy their tickets. And then they go, oh, June 1st, I can't make it. I'll just get a refund, instead of calling up or getting online and buying their tickets in July when they're $2,000, double the price. I think I have a lot of people buy 2 tickets. And then in July and the first part of August, you can't transfer them after August 15th, but there's a lot of people transferring tickets. I think people actually buy 2 tickets with the plans of selling one.
Sell one when the price goes up.
Because they know there's going to be a big demand when it gets close to it, and they can sell one. And actually, I guess you could buy 2 at $600, $699, whatever it is.
Yeah.
When the price gets to $2,000, you could sell it at half price. Pay for your own ticket, still have some spending money, pay for your hotel room, I guess. I mean, it's a smart move. I mean, to me. But
I was thinking
a lot of people that do that.
I was thinking I'll come down next year, and I think you totally got me with one of the add-on events with you got a gun club rented out.
Yeah, we have Bit Block Shoot. This next year will be our 3rd year. It's an indoor gun range. Of course, it has to be indoor in August in Texas. Yeah. And that was a great event last year. It really was. But it's limited to the amount of people that can attend. It's food. I think we're going to have alcohol this year. We're going to have drinks
after the shooting.
Well, they put an armband on your arm, and to drink, you have to cut the armband off. So once you cut the armband off, you can't shoot anymore.
Gotcha.
And I think we're going to have 2 machine guns this year.
Cool.
Automatic weapons. They can rent automatic weapons, and they come with a guy. And the guy handles the weapon for you and helps you load it and make sure, so it's not like we're just giving people machine guns in there. So each machine gun comes with a guy. So we're going to add that this year. Thing is, a lot of people, like before COVID, I had more people from the Netherlands than I had from Dallas. Okay. So
that's crazy.
That is crazy. So a lot of people that come, though, are from Europe and Australia, out of the country, and they've never even held a gun. So it's a really big deal to those people to come and shoot a gun. I mean, they're not necessarily wanting to be avid, at marksman, but they just have never shot a gun before because it's illegal to own a gun.
Bucket list check off, right? I got to fire a gun,
Yeah, so I think when we get to automatic weapons, and they're really going to get excited. I shot an AR-15,
Yeah. What are your thoughts on our just current general economic situation? I know that's a loaded question.
Well, I that's a big question. There's so many angles to hit that from. I think luckily where we are the petrodollar, or we would be facing it even worse than before. I always kind of go back, though, when I think of that to inflation. My dad, when I was a kid, maybe I was like 10, I'd get a candy bar for a nickel. And my dad would always be, being I guess he was around 35 or something. When I was a kid, that candy bar was a nickel, but it was twice as big. Yeah. I go, that would be really cool to get a candy bar for twice as big. Now, I think if that same scenario would happen, it'd be like, when I was a kid, that candy bar was a nickel, and your candy bar is $2.50. I mean, there's something skewed about that. I mean, went down a little in size, but now it's gone up. If you take that math, when I was and my dad used to do this. It's weird how I turned into my dad. When I was a kid, a Coke was 6 cents. a nickel and a penny you'd put in a machine. Now what's a Coke? $2, $2.50 in a machine. So if you take that and also at the same time, this makes it even harder to explain. For half or a third of that time, the dollar was on the gold standard. So there wasn't much movement at all. I mean, in the price of Coke compared to now with no gold standard since 71. So let's take that same, price increase from 6 cents to $2.50. I don't even know what that multiplier is, thinking real quickly. It's a lot of money. And then take the fact we're not on the gold standard, we're in free fall inflation. That means that someone now who's 7 or 8 buying a Coke at $2.50, when they get to be my age, it's going to be like $150. And that's what I'm trying to get at.
41x.
Yeah. So
41x increase in the price of a Coke from the time you were a kid till now.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. If you're a kid now and you're buying a Coke, you can and I guess what the point I'm making though really is that if you just use the same inflation rate I saw, that's the price. But you're not going to be using that inflation rate because this whole time that you're a kid to growing up, we've been off the gold standard, the entire time. And the world's on fire in inflation and everybody's tired of the dollar and they're printing like no tomorrow, So that Coke could be $300. It sounds crazy to think, but like I said, just doing the math of what I've seen, a 41x, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of inflation. So, and I think we would be lucky. We would be lucky just to see that over the next 50, 60 years.
And I look at it and see like Great Britain and Europe, it's even worse because I kind of always remember the pound to dollar ratio at about 1.5 to 1.75 to 1. And so the euro has fallen below dollar parity, and the pound's at like 1 point.
Well, I just got back from Paris. Kathy and I went to Paris for like 8 or 9 days, and it was great. It was on parity, and it was great compared to the last time we'd been there. You didn't have to do any calculating at all. You just, if it was 100 euros, it was $100. It was a great time. Matter of fact, I remember we were at a museum at an art thing. This guy it was a Salvador Dali thing, and it was $30,000. He goes, well, you're from America. You should buy this. This is a great time to buy it. You're on parity with the euro. I said, yeah, but I still don't need to spend $30,000 on Salvador Dali, even if it is a good price. Wow. But is there a point, though, that, I go over there to France and I go back to that museum and that piece of artwork still 30,000 euros, but now it takes, 4 euros to make $1. So I go, well, hell, it's $5,000 now. I'd be a fool not to pick it up,
It is going to create some global market fluctuations, some things that people don't even think about. Like I used to manage a territory that included downtown New York City, and I was amazed at how many Brits I would run into. And when you talk to them, like, oh, yeah, we vacation here because it's cheap. Right? Because the exchange rate made it very inexpensive to be like in the most expensive part of America there is. And I'm like, y'all need to really get outside of here because you think this is America. This is not America. This is a small slice of America.
This is cheap.
You go to Tennessee, right? Or go to Texas or go to Florida.
We were really pleasantly surprised because we always go on a trip after Bit Block Boom because we work our butt off. So that's when we do our vacation. About a month after that, we get caught up. And we had made the reservations in Paris like 8 months before, when it was still, the parity was not what it is today. So we were really excited when the euro started dropping, and now the pound's dropped to the lowest it's ever been. It's funny, all the currencies of the whole world are dropping against the dollar, but they're all doing bad. It's just the dollar's not doing as bad as the rest of them.
That's exactly where I'm going with this. That like I see. Like a terrible stability, I guess is the way I would put it in the US dollar, that it's less bad than everything else. It's a less bad option. And I have this crazy prediction that everybody thinks I'm nuts for. I actually think instead of a CBDC, what the United States is going to do is rein stable coins in under FDIC and allow banks to issue stable coins in an attempt to globalize the dollar and spread our inflation across the whole world to, at least for a time, kick the can and mitigate our inflation.
Yes. I think that and when you're talking on the same subject, how does a country like, I can use China for instance, feel that has so many American dollars
Yeah.
and the American U.S. bonds, and the inflation rate, we say it's 8%, but let's really face it, we don't use a lot of things in our formula to figure out what it is. So it's probably more like 15 or 20%. But they've got all these dollars that are dropping in value. Now, we as Americans, we still get something out of all this money being spent.
Sure.
Being given to people, they're spending it, or they're getting their college tuitions helped on, or whatever. But as a society, we're getting something out of the inflation. As a society, China's not getting jack squat out of the inflation. They're just losing 15, whatever, 20% a year. And as most countries are. So we're just like sucking off of them, sucking out all their money and giving it to our people. So people bitch about inflation, which I did earlier, but to a degree, they're paying for more of it than we are. At least we're getting something out of it. They're getting nothing except losing value.
That's what Bukele in El Salvador said. He's like, you guys inflated the dollar. We're a dollarized nation. All your citizens got a check. And, whether that's good or bad doesn't matter. But that did happen. Nobody in El Salvador got a check. All we got was the inflation against the dollar. We got no benefit from what you did because we don't control our own money.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's another reason that the BRICS nations are forming right now to compete with the U.S. dollar. In the past, I mean, let's face it, look what happened to Gaddafi, when he was going to make an African reserve currency and get off the dollar. Look what happened to Venezuela. Look what happens to countries that say, you know what, we think we're going to stop being abused by the U.S. dollar. And I guess Venezuela, El Salvador is not having a problem because they still have the dollar. They just added another currency.
Yeah.
So the BRICS nations, that's a whole different deal. That's like 6 countries getting together to
you're not going
to
just destabilize and invade, Brazil, Russia, India, China. Like that's.
Well, it looks like we're working on Russia right now.
Yeah. I wasn't going to go there today. We have enough problems, but
I'm not saying right or wrong on whatever they've done. I'm not even getting into that. I'm just saying we're pouring a lot of money into that situation there. So
I'm already against the next war. That's where I am with it. I'm not real old, but I've been around long enough to see the aftermath of Vietnam, listen to the stories of Korean War vets. I'm a military veteran myself. I've seen what came out of Afghanistan and Iraq. And my question to all these warmongers is, how many times are you people going to put your penis in a beehive, slap the roof, and get stung before you figure out that maybe this is a bad idea? Maybe we should just not be in everybody's business.
It always amazes me because I've been around a while too. I don't care what we do. I care what we do, but I'm saying it doesn't matter what we do or who will attack or anything. I don't think it really matters. You will have so many people convinced that going to war is the best thing to do at that moment. And if you're against it, you are, in this case, a commie bastard. Yeah. No matter who it would be against. And even so if you go, hey man, you know what? That's not a very good move to go to war. And then we've weaponized the US dollar. Oh my gosh, that's what's that could cause the downfall of the currency, is weaponizing the dollar. And SWIFT, man, I wouldn't be using SWIFT if I was a foreign country. I'd be wanting to get off that system as fast as possible. And Russia was selling all their dollars anyway for a long time. Yeah. I mean, they weren't like getting hurt by not being able to use dollars that much. And then they went after people who had nothing to do with it.
Did you see the UN basically has blamed the Federal Reserve now for the coming global recession?
Oh, well,
so the United States has officially issued a statement that we're heading to a global recession, and it's the Federal Reserve of the United States' fault.
It could be. They could be knowing what they're talking about.
I just see parasites fighting each other, and that's usually bad when that happens. Like when the parasites turn on each other. And I don't think they're necessarily wrong. I think like destroying your own energy economy didn't help you either. Like that, getting rid of your fertilizer before you had a solution. There's a lot of things that these other nations have done, but printing a gajillion dollars usually results in some level of inflation. And when you have the dollar as the global reserve currency, it does affect things beyond your border. That's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and now, on the other hand, you have so much money distributed so many places that it's kind of hard for people just to get off that crack, all these countries, and do away with the dollar. But I could see why they would actually be wanting to do away with the dollar and get off the dollar. And actually, right now, I don't know if it's 3 senators or 3 congressmen that have submitted a bill to quit aid to OPEC, to Saudi Arabia. What in the hell are you talking about? Do they not know the deal? I mean, do they not know why we give them aid?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the deal there with that? I mean, do they just need to go do some basic education and say, that was the deal, is we would protect them if they only took U.S. dollars?
Yeah.
I mean, if we don't protect them, why would they say, okay, we're still going to just take U.S. dollars? That kills the petrodollar. I mean, are you asking for it? I mean, that just was weird to me when I saw that there were 3, I think it was senators, submitted a bill to quit giving aid to Saudi Arabia. They
like to submit bills to play to a base when they know it's not going anywhere, though.
Yeah, that could be true too. But
it doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican, whatever. Virtue signaling is like, it's the thing. It's the current hot thing in the 20s, man. To virtue signal to your base.
And sometimes those virtue signals come back to haunt you, like Joe Biden saying we're going to bring the leader of Saudi Arabia, the pariah he is, to that guy holds us in his hands a lot more than people realize. I mean, and so he goes over there, sees them, begs for some oil, and then they say, we're going to cut 2 million barrels a day, and we're going up on your oil. 20 cents a barrel, just you, no one else we're going up on. So that didn't work out too good for the long run.
It probably would have been better if he didn't go ask.
Yeah, and what's the deal? We got plenty of it. I mean, so now they're going to go to Venezuela to get oil? I never understand the whole green part of oil anyway. We could get it here or get it in a pipeline from Canada, and then if something happens in the pipeline in Canada, we can turn it off, go in with bulldozers and clean it up.
Fix it.
Or we can ship it in tankers from a country who cares about environment, none at all. And if it sinks, there's no way to clean it up. So to me, I don't understand. I would think, I'm not an environmentalist and I don't know a lot about them, but I would just think common sense tells me that environmentalists should be going, we're going to protest importing oil in ships.
That would be the first place.
And get rid of that. And then when you get rid of that, then you could start going, okay, now maybe we want to start working on pipelines, have less pipelines or something, but not go, we want to increase the amount of oil coming on boats. That just sounds like bad logic to me. I mean, if I was playing a game that has a strategic game, I wouldn't be doing that. I'd be going, what's the best way to do it? If it was a board game, you would never say, oh yeah, I'm going to depend on boats coming over here and destroying the rest of the world, rather than taking pipelines I can turn on. I don't understand it. I really don't.
That's because they don't think. It's not about real environmentalism. Like this idea, if I don't see it, it doesn't count. That's kind of what it is. Like we're going to use batteries. Okay, so what about the kids that are mining cobalt in Central Africa? What about
destroying the environment there? They're not cleaning up jack there.
No.
And then what are we doing with those batteries after we use them? And they cost like $20,000 to replace in your car.
I think we'll get there with all this tech, but we're not there, and they're trying to force the development of tech that's just not here yet.
What I foresee happening? Did you see in California the people who went on the special program they had for electricity there? They had a special rate that if you got the meter from the electric company, that it was a special rate. And then when it got really hot, people went to turn the air conditioner on, and it said, you can't lower your air conditioning right now because we're
manually jacked them up to like 84 or something that.
They couldn't lower the temperature. So I foresee cars coming out, electric cars coming out, and then you go, well, I want to charge this car because I want to drive over to Dallas from Fort Worth, and that's 30 miles away. And you put in the destination, and the car goes, you can't drive that far. That's too far. You'll burn up too much electricity. We're in a electrical savings mode. Or maybe something like COVID happens, and you go, well, I want to go to the grocery store, and it goes, no cars are allowed to be on the road right now, and you can't even get out your driveway. I mean, that's crazy thinking, but it's crazy thinking, but crazier things could happen.
I'll keep my Challenger. I'm not giving it up. You know, if they take all the rest of the cars off the road, I can actually run the car at the speed it was designed to run at. That's where I'm at with that. Let's take just a couple comments people made and see if there's anything you can respond to on it. Carl says, Gary, what have you found to be the best strategies for orange pilling fellow boomers?
I found the best strategy for orange pilling anybody is to just get them dollar cost averaging. I don't care if you use Swan. I don't care if you use the Cash App, but it's a lot easier to talk someone into buying $5 worth of Bitcoin a week, every other week, a month, than to buying $1,000 worth. I found in the past, if you an experience I had a friend back in 2017. I talked him into buying some Bitcoin. He bought a couple $1,000s worth, and Bitcoin was running up to 16,000 last year. I called him back up, said, have you looked at your Bitcoin, and are you aware of what's going on? Because I've known him since second grade. He goes, no, I haven't. I bought some, but I never looked at it again. And he looked at it and said, oh my gosh, it's doing really good. And so that's pretty typical if you talk him into just buying some Bitcoin. But if you can talk him into dollar cost averaging, an example on the other side, I had a friend of mine I talked into dollar cost averaging with Swan, and he was buying like $100 a week. And then he called me like 3 months later and said, okay, I understand Bitcoin now. I just bought $100,000 worth. And he's another boomer. So by dollar cost averaging, they're buying on a weekly or biweekly or monthly basis. Even if it's a small amount, $5, they get an email every week. Your purchase just went through for $5, $10, $20. Your total, they go, oh, and how much I got now? And they go look at it. They go, oh, I got $100 worth of Bitcoin now. Or I got $1,000 worth. Oh, it's up. And they start seeing it and they start paying attention to it. And that process of buying on a regular basis, combined with the fact you've got some skin in the game, and now you know what's going on, you're seeing the growth, that causes people to buy faster than anything else I've had any problems with, anything to use. So I just recommend talking people into, yesterday I orange pilled some guy on the Swan. I said, look, do $10 a month. That's one drink a week. I mean, $10 a week. Dude, that's one drink a week when you go out to a club. I know you can afford a drink a week. And if Bitcoin did turn to zero, which the chances of it going to 1 million now are probably higher than going to zero.
Agreed.
So if Bitcoin did go to zero, you're not going to be crying if you had $150 in there. You know, so let's start putting in $10. And I orange pilled him right there on the spot. It's real easy to do that. Talking someone into spending thousands of dollars is much harder to do.
It's why I've started using the term orange seed instead of orange pill. Like you plant the seed and you get the little tiny bit and let it grow, right? Because I think some people try to go over the top. But you know what got through to you was somebody used your language. And when you're talking to boomers and you talk about dollar cost averaging, well, they've lived their whole life with 401ks. They've had financial liars come into their break room at their office forever saying the dollar cost average. So I think the biggest thing is what people do is they find a thing that's their thing, like programmable money. Well, that'll do it for me. But I'm very aware that most of the people I talk to, they just are gobbledygook when I say that. So like use the language that the person you're talking to is comfortable with. That's a sales technique too. Like never use words that your prospect does not know and use themselves. Use their same words. That's good advice when you have to talk to the cops too, by the way. Use their language. Gary, what's your favorite on-off ramp for fiat to Bitcoin?
From fiat to Bitcoin, I use Unchained Capital. Okay. I like Unchained Capital. I buy all the time on the Cash App. I just have money in there. I just buy. I bought $100 this morning. I just like buying small amounts in there for some reason. I see it down. I go, I'll buy 100. I'll buy 500. It's not like with that small amount, I'm really saving a lot. If it's 19,400 or 19,100, I just buy a lot in there. It seems like. I think that, I'm not one of those people. I'm not. And I probably should be, but I'm not sitting here going, "Oh my gosh, I could get it like instead of 2% for 1.5%." Because I kind of feel like it's like that's comparing me to the person who goes, "Okay, Bitcoin is 20,000 now. I'm going to wait till it hits 15." Hell, when it hits 150,000, you aren't going to care what you bought it at. So and I'm a true believer it's going to hit there. So I just buy whenever I feel like buying. But usually I use the Cash App or I use Swan. I do dollar cost average with Swan, and then if I buy a good bit of Bitcoin, I'll buy it with Unchained.
Okay. I have a page on one of my sites, thebitcoinbreakout.com/tools. And everything you just said is actually one of the options listed on there. For small buys, I've come to really like Strike because I don't actually buy it. I like that. It's like another level of privacy screening that I deposit $100 and then I send $100 to a Bitcoin address. Well, is that my Bitcoin address? I don't know, and I don't know that we're ever going to be able to completely hide everything. And I don't know that we ever really want to. I think there is a long-term future where Michael Saylor's design of you're borrowing against your Bitcoin forever until you die may work if you build a large enough stack. The rich have been dealing with real estate for thousands of years.
Then you got situations though that you have to have a large enough stack, because if you borrowed at $60,000, now that Bitcoin's 19, you've had to like add more Bitcoin to your collateral, and certainly you can ride it out if you have enough Bitcoin to ride it out, but you could get to the point where it's going, oh my gosh, this is the last of my Bitcoin. If it goes down again, they're going to start selling my Bitcoin stash. And so I've traded Bitcoin now that's at 15,000 to get, some that I had to pay 60,000 for, So you got to be careful with that is what I would recommend to people.
Agreed. I think you're starting at, you're years out from where this is doable, and you're looking at starting out with like a 2% loan to value ratio. And that becomes pretty sustainable across time. So when you're a billionaire like Saylor, that all makes perfect sense. And there's the rest of us that,
and this is not financial advice, but I do think we're closer to that being a tool to use right now.
I do.
To grow your stack. You said that's not financial advice, just my personal thoughts on it. I think at 19,000, I couldn't see Bitcoin. And like I said, I'm not an expert and I don't do all these charts and stuff, but I'd have a hard time believing Bitcoin would get under 14,000. I'm not saying it couldn't get to 14,000 by any means. I don't think it could ever get to zero. Could get to 3,500. I would probably got to 3,500. I'd probably actually start selling stuff, at that price, because I've been there a couple of times, and was buying all I could get. I just would run out of fiat. That's a problem, is you run out of fiat when it gets to those really good prices.
Yeah. I'm not big on models, but if we do historical average of the 4-year cycle, the low in this cycle based on the high should be somewhere in the $14,000 range. But I also see volatility slowly shrinking in each one of these cycles. So maybe that doesn't happen. But I've heard that number tossed around by a lot of, you never know if they really are, but they call themselves whales. Is like the backup truck number. Like at that point, you just go all in hard. I don't know. I get excited some days because I get on Twitter and I hear all this about Bitcoin crashed. I'm like, oh, go buy some more, and I'll pull up the price. It's like 19.1.
Yeah, it's 19.1 now.
Or yesterday, like this is not the newest people into this. They use the word crash really loosely. Like it went down 1%, it crashed. I'm like, I've been in this game since 2013. I expect more from a crash.
If you look at Bitcoin this year. I'm not talking about from the high of last year. I'm just talking this year. Yeah, I think it's actually held its own against stocks pretty well.
Oh, it has
this yeyear. Now, if you go to the all-time high, no, it hasn't. It's down. But then again, though, the all-time high, my gosh, that shot up there in no time at all. You were able to walk down the street, look at your phone, and then you looked at it 5 minutes later, it was up another $1,000. Yeah. That is nothing that can last forever. But I don't think anyone who's held Bitcoin for more than 2 years is down. I think that's the number if you've held Bitcoin for more than 2 years. But then again, like I said, I don't recommend anyone just to go buy everything they have in Bitcoin. I'm a person that believes in just buying on a regular basis and slowly. That's what I do. But I probably believe stronger than other people, so I probably buy at a faster pace than most people. So,
yeah. I think it's one of those things, like if you ease into it over time, like you were talking about DCAing, you pretty much are always going to work out over time. Last question from Hunters here, and we'll let you get on with your life. Are there venues that are taking Bitcoin? I guess he's talking about for conferences and things like that.
Well, BitBlock Boom takes Bitcoin. I know that the Bitcoin conference, which is in Amsterdam, I guess going on right now maybe, and in Miami in May, they take Bitcoin. I think most Bitcoin wouldn't be much of a Bitcoin conference, in my opinion. If it,
I don't think that's what he's asking, though. I think he's asking the other side of it, like when you're paying for the venue, like your transaction with
Okay.
the hotels and the conference centers and stuff like that.
No, I haven't had that yet. I use normally Marriott's or Sheraton's. This year I'm using Hilton, but none of those do. I'm sure there are some smaller venues, but I use major hotel chains, for the venues. And so none of those have accepted Bitcoin so far. Something I don't understand is, why do conferences give a 10% discount for Bitcoin? I mean, when they could just, if the ticket was $100,
yeah,
instead of selling it for 90, they could just take the 100 and buy $100 worth of Bitcoin. And I don't understand that. Maybe I'm missing some. Maybe it's like to show their support for the Bitcoin world. I'm not sure.
I think it's almost expected at this point in some ways, or like it gets people motivated. I don't know. I know that if I'm going to do a discount, the first thing I do is raise the price by the amount of the discount.
Yeah, right? That's what a lot of people do.
Yeah. So you think you're getting a discount, but you're not really getting a discount and stuff like that.
I did see something on your site I want to mention.
Okay.
You need to take that Coinbase banner off there, dude.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty old. I have that even on my tools page, though. Like, if you're going to buy it and get out immediately.
I don't think you can support Coinbase.
I don't support Coinbase. I support people buying Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think that's. I think there are a lot of better places to send them.
And if you go to my tools page, it does kind of rank things. And like one is kind of like, if you want to buy regularly in larger amounts, that's my number one recommendation. You want to buy small amounts here and there, Strike, because it's so simple. It's an app, you install it. The problem with Strike has been probably 1 in 20 people, when they're doing their KYC crap so they will fail it. And then Strike does absolutely nothing to help you. They're like, you're on your own. We can't tell you. We can't talk to you. We can't do anything for you. They have absolutely lousy customer support. And they're
real strict on all their stuff. They were a sponsor of BitBlock Boom this last year, and they were a great sponsor. But they're real strict on, like, they sponsored casino night, and we couldn't do buy-ins, because people ran out of money and they want to get some more. So we had cheap buy-ins, just enough to make them like have to think about it. It's not like we really made it, which was fine not to do. It's not like we got rich off of buy-ins on casino night, but we couldn't do them because I think they got like maybe $20,000 for $5,000 or something, $5 or something. It was just enough to make them, instead of like giving them unlimited money, there's no excitement to unlimited money. But we had to quit doing that, which was fine. But they were really pretty strict on what they could do.
Yeah. My thing was just more like, so I signed up for it. Everything worked. And they do a referral program, but they cut you off annually at $400 in referrals. You don't get any more. And I think it's probably still not to 1099 anybody.
Wow.
So it's like, I told my wife, just sign up for it. And I'll, when I run out of referrals for the year, I'll just run yours as a link. And she could never get it to work. They kept saying she needed to reapply, and she just couldn't ever get, like, after a couple of weeks of trying to get approved, I am who I say I am. You just gotta go, I'm sorry. And I've had people email me about it. Hey, you recommend Strike? And I'm like, I've tried to get Maulers on the show, anything to get some kind of an inside relationship, but because I was able to do it with Fold. Fold, like if you have a problem with Fold, I got an inside guy that'll help you a little bit. And I have not been able to do that with Strike. Fold is like one of my favorite things now.
I've been with Fold a long time. We have, gosh, I'm saying I can't think of his name right now. It's on the show tomorrow on Bitcoin Boomer show. I can't think of his name right now. I'm embarrassed to say that.
Don't you hate that?
Yeah, it happens to me a lot though. The older I get, but being a boomer, I can always throw that off. It's like when you're a boomer, you can throw things off to like, hey, I'm a boomer. It's like, if you want to like watch an extra movie for free, no kid's going to say anything to you. Yeah.
Yeah. That helped me in my early days as a podcaster. I was doing it in the car. Well, of course it sucked. I was in a car trying not to get hit. But dude, this has been fun. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for filling in. I really, really appreciate that you
enjoyed it.
Willing to do it. And hopefully you'll be at the meetup tonight. And if you are, I'll buy you a drink.
Yeah, and for those who are in Dallas-Fort Worth, check Fort Bitcoin. They have a good meetup once a month. And also, if you're in Dallas, check out BitBlock Barbecue. We do a Bitcoin meetup once a month over there at a barbecue place. Yeah. We have a good turnout. Usually about 50 people turn out. It's always at the same place, Ferris Wheeler's Barbecue.
We should do, like, I found this really cool skeet and Sporting Clays range. It's right off the backside of 820 on the backside of Fort Worth. We should do like a local version of the BitBlock bang, right? Like, you know, and do like a Bitcoin meetup and go do some sporting clays, because that's like golf with a shotgun.
Yeah. I like sporting clays. Yeah, you get in the. Is that when you get in the golf cart and you drive around?
Yeah, most of the time it's more of a walking course, but I guess they do have ones with
last one I did had golf carts. They took you around the golf courts.
That's cool too. But yeah, you have like crossing shots, and it's not just skeet where you're just shooting the same.
Right. No, I enjoy that. I enjoy that a lot. What kind of shotgun do you have?
All of them.
Well,
all of them. For that, I'm really fond of over and unders though, and I'll like handicap myself a little bit. I like to shoot I have a Brita White Wing and 20 gauge, and it beats the shoulder a little less when you're shooting 2 rounds. You're shooting 50 shots, and I don't know. It makes you try a little harder, I guess, when you.
No, I like doing that. I'm always up for that. That might be a good idea, actually.
It would be fun.
That tonight. Yeah.
I'll shoot you a link later today with the venue where it's at, because it is a pretty cool venue, and then they're the same type of thing. When you're done, then you can drink. They do like wine tastings and stuff like that. So.
Oh, that even sounds better. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, send me the link. Well, I enjoy being on the show. I always enjoy talking Bitcoin, and I like talking about money. I'm not a financial guru. I'm more of a. I think it's very interesting where money's gone, where it's been, what it's doing. You know, I think most of the YouTube. It's funny, I don't watch regular TV anymore. Everything I watch on my television is YouTube now. And my feed is almost constantly filled up with things about money and about Bitcoin.
So for anybody watching this video live, it'll be about an hour. Anybody watching after the fact, there's a link down there. It goes over to audio notes are. All of Gary's stuff, you can find it for this episode. Again, it's episode 22 of the Bitcoin Breakout, 3180 of the Survival Podcast. Make sure you get over. There's all kinds of good links down there, but if you click it right now, we're still live. It won't be up yet because we're not quite finished. And Gary, I really appreciate it. And by the way, I noticed you do have an account on Fountain. I am going to set up for boosts and things for this episode to split with you. So you get some V for V on the V for V network as well. So if you guys are tipping me or boosting me for this episode on Fountain or any other 2.0 app, Gary will get a cut for being here with us today.
Well, that's nice. I need to go in there and do more work on that. I haven't figured that out yet. I've had a hard time on
your podcast, bro.
Well, I have a hard time on it. Every time I do it, I think I'm on what's Adam Curry's podcast thing where you get paid. It says I'm already doing that with something else.
You have another. You're just managing it with another tool. I used to manage it through Telegram with Satoshi Streambot. I had to turn it off to use Fountain. And the reason I'm using Fountain is it's just like what I want to do for you is so simple. I think
I've lost Satoshi Streambot because I went into Telegram and I was getting pinged so much.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really up on Telegram. I couldn't even listen to a podcast because every 3 minutes, you just got 5 Satoshis. You just got 12, which I appreciated, but I couldn't enjoy it. So I went in and I wanted to mute it and I deleted it. And so I said, I went and added it back, but you got to put in the stuff to get it working.
Yeah. So, if you have trouble shutting it off so you can manage it with Fountain and you need help, let me know. And my web dude could I'll volunteer him against his will and he can help you. Because it didn't take him long to shut it off for me because I couldn't figure out how to shut it off.
Well, I do need help. I'm telling you right now, I do need help because I wanted to get that done. And they were really nice. They contacted me at Fountain and said, hey, they replied when I asked them. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I haven't moved forward with it, and I do want to. So
they can't control the other side.
Yeah.
But all you need to receive, though, from a split is an account. So you have that. I already found you. I followed you. So I'll set up a split. And again, man, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks.